Hello and welcome to New Central Television. I am Dakbo Adegboye. We begin in South Africa, where we understand a delegation led by President Cyril Ramaphosa's National Security Advisor, Sydney Mufamadi, has been sent to Washington, D.C. to lobby the Biden administration and congressional leaders on the U.S.-South Africa trade relations. This comes amidst concerns that South Africa's controversial stance on Russia's war against Ukraine is jeopardizing its economic and political relations with America. The team is likely to focus its efforts on trying to ensure South Africa is not expelled from the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, a U.S. law that gives duty and quota-free access to the U.S. market for selected African countries, including South Africa. The law is due to be extended or terminated in 2025, and there are growing concerns that South Africa could be ejected then or even before. Vincent Magwanya, spokesperson in the presidency, says many other aspects of relations between South Africa and the U.S. would also be discussed. Professor Sifo Sepe, a political analyst, joins me from Gauteng to unpack the latest development as regards this story. Thank you for your time, sir. All right, Professor, I might have to appeal that you unmute your device so we can hear you well.
It's unmute at the moment.
All right, thank you. I can hear you now. All right, now, I mean, it appears like South Africa is suddenly all over the place. I mean, is the country becoming more confused on its controversial stand on Russia's war against Ukraine?
Well, South Africa is very clear about where it stands on that matter. And when you talk about clarity, we're talking about that South Africa has taken a position of being on the fence. And the idea of being on the fence is that it finds itself having too many masters to please. But it has taken a position that is largely to say Russia has been a friend to South Africa for many years, and it will be unwise and politically dangerous, especially within the largely black population, to dump a long-time friend like Russia. Russia was there during the times and during our struggle against apartheid. And of course, the US is a very powerful ally as well. And so South Africa finds itself between the hard rock in what we say an elevated position, in the sense that it is very unclear about who to please in this case. But what is very clear is that it is aware that there are reprisals that will emerge for its stance on Russia. Right. The US has made it very clear that there are relations that become strained, and if South Africa does not play by the rules or it does not conform to the US interest, then there'll be consequences. And in sending a delegation to the US, the South African government hopes to persuade the US to say the position of neutrality is not the position of anti the US.
Now, let's talking about the delegation right now. How important is the South African market for the U.S. economy, and how could strained relations impact on trade and investment in South Africa?
Well, at the moment, the U.S. position is very strong. I mean, the U.S., there's what you may call a bipartisan position with regard to what it regards as an invasion of Ukraine. And once you have a position that is bipartisan, the U.S. expects that parties that are linked and are beneficiaries to either preferred trade relations will also conform. And the U.S. at the moment is second to China in terms of being the major trading partner. But for a long time, the U.S. was the main trading partner for South Africa. But also, you must also understand the issues of sanctions, that South Africa does not want to be on the list of those countries that may face the sanctions. So this delegation is meant to say this is a matter that South Africa will try to clear. But because in its position in terms of policy of the African National Congress, that position is very clear that South Africa does not want to withdraw from ICC. But to do so, one must also act. You must be seen to be compliant. So the South African government, because it wants to be friends to everybody, it finds that that is not going to work. And like you say, it's a controversial position, but it's a position that says we do not know who to please at the moment. But what is very clear is that Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, has been invited and has accepted. So we find ourselves really jumping up and down, desperate for some miracle to happen.
All right. Now let's talk about the outcome the delegation is hoping to achieve through lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C. What do you anticipate, as the eventual outcome? Also, in terms of anticipation too, how do you see this whole situation, unfolding in the coming months?
Well, first of all, I don't think the U.S. is going to buy the nonsense coming from South Africa. You're either, this notion of being on the fence for them will be that you are against us. The issues that are very clear. If there is a position that there are human rights violation, South Africa cannot be seen to be saying, yes, there are no human rights violation, because it will undermine its own membership of the International Criminal Court. So you do have a very confused president. This is a problem when you have a president who's not principled. But the U.S. is not going to be budging. It is very committed to making sure that the U.S. interests come first. And as they say in the U.S. has no permanent friends, but it has permanent interests. And the issue of Ukraine is very, very central to the debate taking place in the U.S. And already the U.S. has committed a number of support in terms of arms, in terms of money to Ukraine. So it cannot be seen to be as schizophrenic as South Africa is. So if one tries to pan it out in terms of what will happen, is that South Africa will find itself not in the position to please the U.S., and they will be sent back packing to be told that you have to take a position. You cannot please all masters. You have to have one master, and you must have a principal position.
All right, finally, before I let you go, let's look at, of course, the influence of South Africa, particularly in, in the region. Now, how crucial is South Africa in regional security and stability? And what role does the U.S. play in supporting South Africa's role in this?
Well, South Africa was always selected to play that major role. It was a country that the U.S. felt that it's an entry point towards the continent. And Bush was made it very clear that when he talks about Africa, he talks about both South Africa and Nigeria. So anybody who wants to do business in Africa will have to make sure that they carry the weight and the influence of South Africa in that. But if South Africa plays this particular controversial and schizophrenic posture, then it may be that African countries may also dump it as a partner that can be relied upon. But anybody, even in this country, South African leaders are speaking in folk tongues. You have on 1 minute, one minister saying we should have pulled out of the ICC, and then you also have others saying we remain members of ICC. So when you have that confusion at a level of leadership in government, then you know that you're dealing with people who are spineless, who have no, what you may call, who are unable to take a principal position. This is very different from the position that Mandela took when he told Biden that if Biden thinks that South Africa is going to abandon its long-time friends and allies, then Clinton can go and jump to the nearest pool. But that was the position. This president does not have that. South Africa does not have that principal position.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. And of course, we wish South Africa all the best.
Thank you.